So we're back for another deep thought. We're going to be looking into something really fascinating today, financial freedom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Specifically, we're going to be looking at a YouTube video called Discover the Secrets to Unlocking Financial Freedom from the Circle of Greatness with Nehemiah Davis. And I'm really excited about this because this is something that, is really important to a lot of people, right? I mean, who doesn't want financial freedom?
Right. Yeah. Everybody. That's the goal, isn't it? Everybody wants to be financially free.
Yeah, and so we're going to kind of unpack this video and see what we can glean from it in terms
Right.
of actionable strategies for building wealth, right, and achieving financial independence.
Absolutely.
Um, and what I think is really cool about this video is that it features people who are actually achieving financial success in different fields. So it's not just theoretical;
Right. Yeah.
it's practical.
It's people who are actually doing it.
Yeah.
So they're young guns crushing it.
Yes, exactly.
So I think that's what's so valuable about this video and our deep dive into it is that it's going to be actual strategies from people who are doing it, making it happen.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the first things that really jumped out to me in this video was this concept of leverage.
Oh yeah, huge.
And they kind of use this term in a very sort of all-encompassing way, not just in terms of financial leverage, but also in terms of leveraging resources, leveraging knowledge.
Right.
And so, Smitty, one of the speakers in the video, said, "I don't use cash for nothing. I use credit to leverage everything."
Wow. Okay.
So, when you hear something like that, what's your initial reaction?
I mean, so many thoughts are coming to mind because I know we're taught, right? We're
Right.
taught to save our money, to, save diligently and pay cash for everything. But his approach is completely different. It's like, look, if you want to grow your wealth fast, you need to use credit to your advantage.
Yeah.
Leverage it.
Yeah, it's almost like this idea of like, okay, instead of saving up slowly and then buying something,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, how can I use credit to get me to a point where I can then, acquire assets or launch businesses that will then generate more income
Yeah.
that will then pay back that credit and put me in a better position.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a fast track.
Yeah, it's kind of a different mindset.
Right.
And so that was something that really stuck out to me. The other thing that was really emphasized in this video was the importance of knowledge.
Oh, for sure.
And one of the speakers, I believe it was Derek, said, "Your biggest expense in life is what you do not know."
Wow.
So what are your thoughts on that?
That's a really interesting way to think about it because knowledge is something that you can acquire, right? It's not something that's tangible, but it's an asset. It's definitely an asset.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it, you're going to end up paying for it in some way or another.
Yeah, whether it's through missed opportunities or costly mistakes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, this whole idea of like knowledge as an asset is something that I think is really important for anyone who's trying to build wealth, achieve financial freedom.
Right. Because you need to know how the game is played. You need to know the rules, the ins and outs, the loopholes.
Yes, and I like how they kind of frame it as an expense because it makes you think about it in a different way.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Right.
like, okay, I'm actually losing money.
By not knowing.
Yeah, by not knowing something.
Yeah, it's a huge expense.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the specific individuals who were featured in this video. So we have Derek, who's in real estate and event spaces.
Okay.
We have Ramel, who's doing self-storage units.
Okay.
And we have Smitty, who's kind of the credit and funding expert.
Okay.
And so, each one of them has their own kind of unique perspective and journey when it comes to achieving financial success.
Got it.
So let's start with Derek. So Derek, in terms of real estate, he mentioned that, he was initially inspired by seeing other people making moves in real estate, even if it was on a small scale. He said, "I just need to see something one time."
Right.
So what do you think about that? Like, what does that tell us about, the kind of mindset that you need to have?
I think it's really important to have, proof of concept, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you can see someone else doing it, it makes it more real.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it too.
Hmm.
And it doesn't even have to be something huge. Like, he was saying, even if it's on a small scale, if you can see someone else doing it and making it work, it just gives you that belief that you can do it too.
Yeah, that it's possible.
Exactly.
And that it's not like this magical thing that only certain people can achieve.
Right, right.
And so, he talks about being fed up. He was fed up with kind of the limitations of a fixed income.
Yep.
And that was kind of the catalyst for him to really pursue financial freedom.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, right?
Right. I think that's the turning point for a lot of people, right? Where they're like, okay, I had enough.
Yeah.
I don't want to live like this anymore. I want something different.
And I want to be in control of my own destiny.
Exactly.
And so, Derek, he's now transitioned from regular rentals to these commercial mixed-use buildings.
Oh, wow.
And he owns 3 commercial buildings. And he's making anywhere from like $30,000 to $100,000 or more a month.
Wow. Okay.
And so what do you think about that transition? Like, what does that tell us about kind of, his strategy for building wealth?
I mean, he's definitely thinking bigger, right?
Yeah.
He's scaling up. He's not just content with, small residential rentals. He's going for these larger commercial properties that have the potential to generate significantly more income.
Right. And he specifically mentions that he's actually selling off his larger residential properties
Oh,
to
interesting.
invest in these bigger commercial ventures.
Okay.
So, for example, he sold a property recently and made a $200,000 profit.
Wow.
And he's using that money to invest in a 50-unit building.
Okay.
So he's really like, take it to the next level.
Yeah.
And he also talks about how, seeing other people's success, like seeing people retire their parents or invest in event spaces, that really motivated him.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so, again, we see this theme of like exposure to what's possible.
Right,
Can really expand your vision.
Absolutely. It's like if you can see someone else doing it, it just makes it more real.
Yeah.
And it gives you that motivation to say, okay, I can do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to Ramel. So Ramel, he started out in residential real estate.
Okay.
Had a duplex, had a brownstone. He actually made 6 figures on his first deal.
Wow. Okay.
And he built $1 million portfolio in residential real estate.
Wow.
So he was already doing pretty well.
Yeah.
But then the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
and he ran into some issues with tenant non-payment
Oh, right. Yeah.
because of the eviction moratoriums.
Right.
And so that kind of forced him to think outside the box
Yeah.
and look for alternative income streams.
Right.
And so he had this kind of aha moment when he was observing that storage units in his area were like 100% occupied.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting.
And so he decided to, kind of pivot into self-storage.
Okay.
And now he invested $50,000 in a mastermind to learn the business.
Oh.
And he used $120,000 of profit from a property that he sold to buy his first self-storage facility.
Okay.
And now he has over 300 units and another 240 under contract.
Wow. That's incredible.
So, what are your thoughts on that kind of journey and that pivot?
Well, I think it shows, his ability to adapt
Yeah.
to change circumstances.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was doing well in residential real estate, but when things changed, he didn't just stick with what he knew. He was willing to learn something new, invest in that knowledge, and really make a big change.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valuable lesson for all of us, right?
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
like, sometimes things happen that are outside of our control,
Yeah.
and we have to be willing to adapt.
Right. And it also shows his keen observation skills, right? Like
Yeah.
he was paying attention to what was happening in the market.
Yeah.
And he saw an opportunity.
Yeah, and he noticed this like unmet need,
Right.
right? Like everybody needs storage.
Yeah, for sure.
And so he was able to kind of capitalize on that.
Exactly.
And the fact that he invested in a mastermind, right?
Yeah.
Like that shows you that he understands the importance of learning from people who are already successful.
Right. He's not trying to reinvent the wheel. He's learning from the best.
Yeah.
And it paid off for him, clearly. Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that he mentioned about self-storage is that it's resilient.
Yeah.
Like, it does well in both economic downturns and upturns.
Oh, interesting.
And so, that's kind of a unique aspect of this particular asset class.
Right. Yeah.
So what do you think that is?
Well, I mean, in an economic downturn, people are often downsizing, right?
Mhm.
So they need storage for their stuff.
Yeah.
And then in an economic upturn, people are buying more stuff.
Right.
And they need storage for that too.
Right. So it's kind of a win-win situation.
Yeah, exactly.
And, he also mentioned that he increases rent every 90 days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's an interesting strategy for maximizing revenue.
Right.
And he also mentioned that he uses SBA 7A loans to acquire these facilities.
Okay.
And so those loans, you can potentially get them with as little as 10% down.
Wow. Okay.
And he even talked about using 0% interest business credit cards to cover the down payment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So again, we see this theme of leverage.
Yeah.
Right.
Using credit to your advantage.
Yeah.
Maximizing those opportunities.
Okay, so let's talk about Smitty.
Okay.
So Smitty is the credit and funding expert.
Right.
And he has a really inspiring story. He went from a 400 credit score to over 800.
Wow. Okay.
And so what was it that motivated him to really focus on credit?
Well, he saw a friend get approved for a $20,000 line of credit really quickly.
Okay.
And that just showed him the power of having good credit.
Yeah.
Like how quickly you can access capital and how much easier it makes things.
Yeah, and he specifically contrasts that with the idea of saving.
Right. Which takes time.
Yeah, which can take a long time.
And discipline.
Yeah.
And so, he realized that credit can be a much faster way to get to where you want to go.
Yeah. And so he's used his knowledge of credit to build multiple businesses.
Right. Okay.
He's done marketing ventures, a semi-truck company, luxury car rentals, Airbnb units.
Wow.
And he built a 7-figure portfolio using borrowed money.
Okay.
So again, we see this theme of leverage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things that I thought was really cool in the video is they actually did like a live funding demonstration.
Oh, wow.
And they got Neo, one of the people in the video, approved for a $20,000 line of credit in minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, that just shows you how quickly things can happen.
Yeah.
When you have the right knowledge.
Right.
And you know how to use the system to your advantage.
Yeah, for sure.
But Smitty was also careful to emphasize that the purpose of this funding isn't for personal luxuries.
Right.
It's for building wealth.
Exactly.
It's for generating more income.
Right.
He talks about your money as soldiers.
Right.
They're out there working for you.
Exactly.
And he also outlined what he called a 2-year millionaire play. And this involves using funding for deals with relatively low down payments.
Okay.
And then refinancing or flipping those assets for profit.
Okay.
And then flipping up into commercial real estate.
Okay. So it's kind of a step-by-step process?
Yeah, it's like a ladder.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
You're kind of climbing up the ladder.
Right.
And so, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what are some of the key things that someone would need to consider if they were going to try to implement this?
Well, I think, first of all, you need to have a really good understanding of the market.
Yeah.
Right? You need to know what properties are worth.
Yeah.
You need to know how to find good deals.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to have a good understanding of refinancing options.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something that you can just jump into without doing your research.
Right.
And you also need to be comfortable with risk.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's always risk involved in real estate investing.
Yeah. Right. And, he talks about flipping up, but what does that actually mean?
So I think what he means is that you're using the profits from your smaller deals to invest in bigger and bigger properties.
Okay.
So you might start with a single family home, then you flip that into a duplex, then you flip that into a fourplex, and so on. So you're constantly moving up the ladder.
Yeah, you're kind of scaling up your investment.
Exactly.
Okay, so one of the things that I really appreciated about this video was the emphasis on self-investment.
Oh, yeah, that's crucial.
And so, all three of these guys, Derek, Rammel, and Smitty, they all talked about the importance of continuous learning.
Right.
And seeking knowledge from others.
Yeah.
And they seem to view this as more important than any specific asset class.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because knowledge is the foundation.
Right.
Right? It's the foundation of everything. If you have the knowledge, you can figure out how to make money in any asset class.
Right.
But if you don't have the knowledge, it doesn't matter what asset class you're in.
Yeah.
You're not going to be successful.
Right.
So I think that's why they emphasize self-education so much.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the key to everything.
Yeah, and I think it also helps you to adapt, right?
Oh,
because the world is constantly changing,
right,
and the market is constantly changing.
Right.
So if you're not constantly learning and growing, you're going to get left behind.
Absolutely.
Okay, so they also talked about this really interesting concept called the family legacy meeting.
Oh, okay.
And this is the idea of pooling resources and knowledge with family and friends to kind of foster collective growth.
Okay, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, so Derek, he had an unrealized plan to do this, but Ramel actually provided a blueprint for how to make this work.
Okay.
So what are the core elements of Ramel's blueprint?
So he outlined 3 key pillars. The first is information. So the initiator, the person who's kind of leading this, they need to have some knowledge and experience in the area that they're trying to grow in.
Okay.
The second pillar is integrity.
Okay.
So there needs to be trust among the group.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone needs to be accountable.
Yeah.
And the third pillar is impact.
Okay.
So the focus should be on creating a positive impact for all members of the group,
Mm-hmm.
identifying ways to provide value and opportunity for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's not just about making money.
Right.
It's about helping each other grow and succeed.
Yeah, and so they talked about this model called the Susu model,
Okay.
which is basically, regular contributions from the group that are pooled together,
Okay.
and then each member takes turns receiving the lump sum.
Okay.
And they use that money to invest in each other's development.
Okay.
So like credit repair, funding for certifications, life insurance.
Okay, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, and so what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a really smart way to leverage the power of a group,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're doing it on your own, it can be really hard to save up enough money
Mm-hmm.
to make a significant investment.
Yeah.
But if you have a group of people all contributing regularly, it becomes much easier.
Right, and it kind of creates this accountability
Exactly.
because you know that other people are counting on you.
Right. And it also creates a sense of community
Mm-hmm.
and support,
Yeah.
which I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And they also talked about leveraging collective credit.
Oh, okay.
So, if you have someone in the group who has really good credit,
Yeah.
they can use that credit to access business credit and capital
Okay.
that might not be available to individuals.
Right.
And they gave an example of, a cousin who had an 800 credit score,
Wow.
and he was able to get $45,000 in business credit.
Okay.
And he used that for a real estate down payment. And so, collectively, they were able to achieve over $4 million in lines of credit and capital.
Wow. That's incredible.
And so, what do you think about that? Like, what are the key advantages of that kind of collective approach?
Well, I think it just shows you the power of working together,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you can pool your resources
Yeah.
and your knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
you can achieve so much more than you could on your own.
Yeah.
And it also creates this safety net,
Right.
right? Like if one person in the group is going through a tough time,
Yeah.
the others can help them out.
Right. So it's kind of like a support system.
Exactly.
Okay. So they also talked about partnerships.
Yeah, okay.
And they cautioned against impulsive partnerships.
Right.
Like you shouldn't just partner with someone because they have money.
Right. Right.
What are some of the things that they said you should look for in a partner?
Well, they said you should observe their lifestyle.
Go.
Their long-term goals. And their values.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about the money, it's
Mhm.
about finding someone who's aligned with you
Yeah.
on a deeper level.
Yeah. So you're not just, chasing a quick buck.
Right,
You're
exactly.
trying to build something that's sustainable.
Right.
Okay. So Derek, he also shared some strategies for leveraging FHA loans for first-time investors.
Okay.
So for those who aren't familiar with FHA loans, can you kind of explain what they are and what the advantages are?
Sure. So an FHA loan is basically a government-backed loan
Okay.
that's designed to help people who might not qualify for a conventional loan.
Okay.
And so one of the big advantages is that you can get a loan with a lower down payment,
Okay.
typically around 3.5%.
Okay.
And these loans are available for owner-occupied properties,
Okay.
which means that you have to live in the property for at least a year.
Okay.
But you can buy a multi-unit property,
Okay.
like a duplex or a fourplex,
Okay.
and live in one unit and rent out the others.
Okay.
And so Derek, he talked about some strategies for maximizing the benefits of FHA loans.
Yeah.
So for example, he said you should try to close at the beginning of the month
Okay.
so that you can collect rent from the existing tenants.
Oh.
He also said you should negotiate seller's concessions,
Okay.
which means that the seller will pay some of your closing costs.
Okay.
And he said that you can potentially buy a property with very little out-of-pocket expense
Wow.
by combining these strategies.
Okay.
And he also mentioned that you can use business credit to cover the down payment,
Okay.
which is a really interesting strategy.
Yeah.
And he said that he sold 19 properties in his first year
Wow.
using these strategies.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's definitely a viable option for first-time investors.
Yeah, so it's definitely worth exploring.
Right.
Okay, so Smitty, he also shared some advanced credit building strategies.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things that he talked about was credit card stacking. So can you kind of explain what that is and how it works?
Sure. So credit card stacking is basically a strategy for maximizing the amount of credit you can get approved for
Okay.
in a short period of time.
Cool.
And the way it works is that you apply for multiple credit cards
Okay.
from different banks
Okay.
that pull from different credit bureaus.
Okay.
So, for example, you might apply for a card from a bank that pulls from Experian,
Mm-hmm.
and then a card from a bank that pulls from a TransUnion,
Mm-hmm.
and then a card from a bank that pulls from Equifax.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason you do this is because each inquiry
Yeah.
only affects the credit score from the bureau that was pulled.
Okay.
So if you spread out your inquiries,
Yeah.
you can minimize the impact on your overall credit score.
Okay.
And so Smitty said that he's been able to get $50,000 to $100,000 or more
Wow.
in business credit using this strategy.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a powerful technique.
It sounds like it.
But it's important to use it responsibly. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to apply for too much credit too quickly.
Right.
Because that can actually hurt your credit score.
Yeah.
But if you do it strategically, it can be a great way to boost your business credit.
Okay, so he also talked about using AI and tools like ChatGPT for credit repair.
Oh, yeah.
So, for those who are struggling with their credit, can you explain how these tools can help?
Sure. So AI and tools like ChatGPT can basically automate the credit repair process.
Okay.
So they can help you to identify negative items on your credit report
Okay.
and draft dispute letters
Okay.
and send them to the credit bureaus.
Okay.
And so this can save you a lot of time and hassle.
Mm.
And it can also help you to get better results
Yeah.
because these tools are really good at what they do.
Yeah.
So if you're serious about repairing your credit,
Mhm.
I would definitely recommend looking into these tools.
Okay, cool. And finally, they talked about their Fund Your Freedom virtual conference.
Oh,
So what is that and what does it cover?
so it's a 5-day or potentially 6-day intensive program
Okay.
that covers everything from credit repair to funding acquisition
Mhm.
to finding discounted properties to deal analysis
Okay.
to exit strategies.
Wow.
And it's designed to help people achieve financial freedom within 6 to 12 months.
Wow. Okay.